The Hindu yoga religion in 10 words or less or more. Also available on Amazon in paperback. Om Jai Ganesha. Karma Bhakti Raja Jnana. This is the way to nirvana. Chariye Kariye Yogam Yanam. This is the same as we just told ya. Yama Niyama Asana Pranayama Pratyahara Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. How many times do we have to tell thee all of yoga is Sanatan Dharma? This is Hinduism. Watch your Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Yana Kanda, Om. Ganapati Muruga Shiva Shakti, Ganapati Krishna Vishnu Lakshmi, Ganapati Hanuman Sitaram, Durga Lakshmi Saraswati, Kali Durga Parvati. We are a Hindu family, Saiva Vaishnava Shakti the three, Om Shanti. Introduction, Foundation. Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha, Jai Ganesha. The Hindu yoga religion, in 10 words or less or more, was designed so that Hindus not only become better educated in the Hindu yoga dharma, but also so that one can explain the Hindu yoga religion to others. We need to be proud to be Hindus and strive for a united Hindu family. Note, we are using the English word religion in the title. Yes, to Hindus, the better term is dharma. However, in today's climate of the massive non-Hindu, spurious yoga movement, 2 words that upset their agenda is Hindu and religion. So too, this is for many, quote, Indians, Hindus, Sanatanis, unquote, not knowing sometimes how to refer to them, who deny the words Hindu and religion, claiming this is a lifestyle and not a religion. These individuals come off as confused and perhaps shallow. There are many lifestyles, and all religions are lifestyles to their devotees. Every Hindu who touts they follow the Hindu lifestyle needs to really ask if they are doing so. Do they do puja daily, do sadhana, go to mandirs, support them, and thus doing good karma? Every Hindu must be able to confidently give an answer when asked, for example, what is Hinduism? What do Hindus believe? Depending upon the amount of time and or the interest of the questioner, a Hindu can give a simple 1-word explanation, up to 10 words, and perhaps with a lot of additional information. Many of those of non-Hindu religions, such as Christianity and Islam, when asked what they believe, are generally very confident in asserting their beliefs. However, too often, when a Hindu is asked in what they believe, they will often hesitate and or make a universal statement that leaves the questioner more confused. Some of these responses may be, oh, we believe in everything. We pray to all. Or even more confusing, we have no beliefs. And we are not even a religion. The latter 2 statements can often be heard from past and present Hindu religious leaders, quote unquote. For example, the current ubiquitous Sadhguru is a prime example of an Indian teacher claiming his organization has no beliefs and is not teaching the Hindu religion or any religion. Yet, the facts remain that these so-called universal gurus are teaching everything from the recognizable Hindu dharma or religion. We have many podcasts and videos at Dharma Yoga Ashram that go into much detail concerning the Hindu yoga dharma, its merits and abuses. We all have beliefs. In fact, this is the beginning of the scientific method, assumption or hypothesis. Of course, we all want to go further and prove out our beliefs. So too with faith. Faith is hope. And like belief, we want to strive to make our hopes a reality. Or, if proved wrong, it is mature thinking to abandon faulty assumptions and hopes. The Ba syndrome explains the importance of belief, for from our beliefs come our attitudes and the resultant actions. Interestingly, Ba is the sound that sheep make, and we know they follow the leader. Therefore, if our beliefs are grounded in logic and reasoning, they can lead us to a rational conclusion or vice versa. Initially, in our study of the Hindu yoga religion, we have to recognize that we're using two languages: the secular language of English and the religious language of Sanskrit, Samskritam. Sanskrit is, by definition, quote, the ancient Arya language of the Hindus, unquote. In other words, Sanskrit is a Hindu religious language. Therefore, divorcing Sanskrit words from Hinduism, like yoga, karma, chakras, mantra, and guru, for example, is inaccurate at best. Note in this definition of Sanskrit, there was another Sanskrit Hindu word, Arya, which, contrary to a popular misrepresentation, has nothing to do with race, but simply and profoundly means noble. Not only is this Sanskrit Hindu word not originally associated with Nazi Germany, but also the Sanskrit Hindu word swastika. This symbol was found in many cultures. The Sanskrit Hindu word swastika simply and profoundly means auspicious or good fortune. And Hitler actually never used the word swastika, but the German word Hakenkreuz, which had a reference to Christianity. One can only imagine why this fact was hidden for so long. Now we clearly see the need for honest and transparent education. In these 10 words, it will be made clear that we are following the ancient and contemporary Hindu, yoga, religious, spiritual, scientific, philosophical lifestyle. It's all of those things. As you will see, the word Hindu is often said to be a foreign word. It is true that the spelling Hindu was apparently applied by outsiders encountering those living in the Sindhu, or Indus River Valley. In other words, this was simply a different pronunciation. Even today, there are Hindus who say Shiva and Shakti and Shanti, while others may say Siva, Sakti, and Santi. As an aside, paradoxically, in Latin languages, not pronouncing the letter H, when they see the word Hindu, they pronounce it Indo. And our religion is Hinduismo. Ism is, of course, the English suffix denoting practices. Thus, the word Hindu designated the people living in this geographical area, which obviously now is the Islamic nation of Pakistan, something to consider. Subsequently, the word Hindu came to mean not only the people, but their way of life, or how they viewed what was holding their life together. We have to recognize there are several synonyms for what is known as Hinduism today. Rita, which means order, Dharma, law, Vedic scriptures, Dharma, yoga practices, Dharma, Sanatan, eternal, Dharma, and Brahmanism, the source. Of course, we are most known by the terms Hindu, Hinduism, and Hindu religion. It is very important to respect that when speaking English, the word religion is used to denote various spiritual, if you will, traditions throughout the word. To deny the word Hindu is bad enough and confusing, but also concerning the word religion. There are those who deny the word Hindu and choose Sanatan Dharma, often to promote a fundamentalist universalist view. However, consider the ramifications of denying the word Hindu. First, this word has been used for millennia, and therefore changing it now would perhaps cause others to rightly ask, why does it take these people so long to figure out who they are? Pause a moment and consider that point. Not only in the past, but also in the present, one could also rightly query, why are so many Sanskrit Hindu words routinely misused with no correction? One has only to think again of swastika, and also yoga, mantra, karma, swami, and guru, to name a few, to realize the problem with not facing problems in the moment, resulting in further confusion. Even a non-Sanskrit word like caste, which is Portuguese, has been allowed to fester and grow. In this case, does the word lazy and Hindu go together, or perhaps too tolerant? Secondly, the denying the word Hindu and religion gives ample justification for the eradication of Hinduism from all comparative texts on religion, as well as religious rites. Would all Hindu marriages become null and void? Would Hindu.orgs be invalid? Would non-profit religious status be removed? Would present groups like HAF, HUA, H-U-A, and KONA, for example, have to remove the H? This denial gives fuel to all those who claim Hindus are confused and actually makes them easy prey for evangelization and theft. The Sanskrit Hindu word Sanatan was applied to recognize certain apparently universal principles. This later term, Sanatan, should, however, never be used to mean that the Hindu Dharma is universal in the sense of being for everyone. This mistaken notion is actually a fundamentalist universalist view that can be found within other religions as well. Remember, Catholic also means universal. All religions should be open to anyone who wishes to learn and or become part of, but never claiming one to be the only way, but rather a way. This mature understanding is what we could call the NAT principle. One's religion is not no way or the way, but a way. Perhaps having been an extremist, finding a middle balance, sattva, is the wisdom that comes from living life. Now, let's actually look at the profound beauty of the word Hindu. Of course, it is a geographical location, the ancient Indus River Valley, or the Valley of the Hindus, but it is much more than many New Age gurus will admit or realize, perhaps. Hindu is earthly and recognizes a certain group of humanity and their culture, lifestyle, and beliefs, hence religion. Remember, all religions are lifestyles to their adherents. However, Indus is also a constellation, thus being cosmic. And looking up the word Hindu, we also see 4 profound definitions. Chandra, moon and Shiva. Sarid, rivers and the Matajis, the mothers. Bindu, the red dot of the Hindu, also the red sun, Surya Vishnu. And Soma, the nectar of bliss, Ananda. Take a moment and say, wow. In other words, to be a Hindu means we worship the moon, Chandra and Shiva, the rivers, Sarid, Matajis, the sun, Surya Vishnu, and the Soma nectar of bliss, Ananda. In other words, Hindus are respecting the life around us and have also defined the 3 basic sampradayas or sects of Hindu Dharma. Metaphorically, Hindus also associate the moon with the mind, the sun with the soul, S-O-L, El-Soul, which Hindus rightly call the Atmana. The rivers correspond with the energies of the miles of nerve currents, the nadis, the blood vessels, and the breath, pranayama. The goal for Hindus is to harmonize the body, mind, and emotions to uncover the Atmana. Atmadarshana paramo dharma. Vidma hitva sahasrasatman. Give us the knowledge of Atmadarshana. Rig Veda 1.10.10. We will fully define this Atmana in the 10 words. How we realize this Atmana is by following the Hindu yoga religious lifestyle. Hindu samudra idiyarti vayubhir. Meaning, fellow Hindus, with the support of the breath, grab a hold of the cosmic ocean within. Rig Veda 9.84. Hindus are also recognized by the Bindu, the mark of a Hindu. Apparently, the ancient rishis also referred to themselves as Bindus. Rig Veda 1.11.4. Puram Bindu Vajri Purush Tutaha. Ancient Bindu Hindu, soulful warrior. To further clarify, let's look at several sets of 3. First, India, Indian, and Hindu. India is, of course, a country. Indian, an ethnicity and or nationality, and Hindu is the religion. It is clear that these three terms could have several combinations. The country India consists of many cultures, many religions, and languages. Not all Indians are Hindus, nor from India, and non-Indians born in India become Indian by nationality. Thirdly, many recognize that there is a growing trend of non-Indian Hindus. Generally, many people are born into a religion, but this is not always the case. Some people have no religion. Some, having been part of a religion, may find the need to ethically convert to another religion or adopt, meaning having no previous religion. Logically, and true to any religion, one who desires to become a Hindu would study and make a serious commitment to the religion. Having renounced any former religious ties, one takes on a Sanskrit, etc., name and formally becomes a Hindu. This name-giving sacrament, called the Namakarana Samskara, is a most auspicious and meaningful ceremony. In other words, one should never simply assume to be of any religion or any serious life endeavor by simply saying so. Now, let's take a moment and look at the word India, which too comes from Indus, but is often said to be given by foreigners. Many would like to see the name changed to Bharat, which is in the Constitution, but this has definite Vaishnava connections. The use of Bharat would be a bad choice to the other sampradayas, as well as, again, people saying these Hindus really don't know who they are. However, here is a profound way to look at the terms Hindu and India. Taking a little license with du, or do, is introspection not the hallmark of Hinduism? Do, go in, Hindu. And what is it that every Hindu is enjoined to do on a daily basis? Light their diya, which symbolizes lighting or uncovering the diya or light within. In diya. There is a profound science and philosophy behind the lighting of the Hindu diya, Deepam. Watch our video on this profound Hindu ritual. Another clarifying set of three is to proclaim that we are Hindu. We do yoga to reach Atman up. This fact and the next will become clear as we explore the 10 words. Finally, we recognize two types of yoga, sat and asat, or true and false. The famous shloka, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, lead me from untruth to truth, from Brihat Aranyakopanishad, is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. This brings us to another set of three. True or real Sat Yoga is all about the Hindu religion, taught by Hindus, not for a fee. Excuse me. Asat or false yoga is one, not taught in a Hindu context, not taught by Hindus, and basically an exercise business or vague so-called spirituality. With numerous Sanskrit Hindu terms out there, so to speak, many are perhaps unaware that they are attracted or deceptively led to the Hindu yoga religion. Obviously, one should be honest in the recognition of Hinduism, and if interested, perhaps become a Hindu, certainly before ever teaching. So why not be proud to be a Hindu? Say to yourself and others, I've got a dot on my head, and it's really, really red. It's a bindu, because I'm a Hindu, and I'm proud to be a Hindu. What about you? And I do yoga because it is Hindu. Karma, bhakti, hatha is to. Rajjnana, it's all yoga. It's all Hindu. It's not boga, meaning bogus. Importantly, a solid foundation of Ganesha consciousness, if you will, is integral to the Hindu yoga religious lifestyle. Why? First, we must recognize that what separates religion from purely secular activities is the other worldly dimension. Some call this the spirit realm, and to Hindus, the Devaloka. The fourth word of the Rig Veda, Devam, recognizes this realm of entities without physical bodies. In fact, Rig Veda literally means a passion to know worship. No devotion, no success in life. Wisely, the Hindu rishis first emphasized worshipping the fire, Agni Mile. Fire is life, and this primal energy is at the core of all existence, both manifest and unmanifest. Recognizing birth and death and a continuum of existence, the human development of religion was inevitable. What happens before, in between, and at death? Spirit beings without physical bodies permeate all religions, indeed life itself. Look at pictures of departed loved ones in one's home. Obviously, when it comes to the religions of the world, these spirit beings can be positive role models, if you will, or negative human-created power structures. Many in all religions are susceptible to the extremes. However, to Hindus, the message is threefold. These devas, devis, male and female, can be viewed as great artwork to raise one's cultural vibration. They can be symbolic teachers, or one may have an intimate inner connection. Any one or all of these can be very effective in one's life. One can clearly see the problem arising, however, when one takes the number 3, the invisible beings, and tries to promote an invisible deity on others. In other words, this is monotheism. If one believes in a spirit realm, just consider that every moment one is coming into existence, as well as leaving the physical plane. From this perspective, the inner worlds must be highly populated, hence the polymorphic view of Hindus, and indeed most indigenous religious cultures. Having said this, let's look at the wisdom of numbers 1 and 2. 1 brings a sense of craftsmanship and art appreciation. Number 2 is the inevitable teachings through symbolism. We all participate and are influenced by various symbols, from advertising, consumerism, entertainment, to personal preference in decor, and of course religious symbolism. It is in this vein that many Hindus understand the power of symbolism and the various devams. Of course, we can't go into all of them here, but let's look at some of the very practical symbolism of the first deity all Hindus worship, Mahaganapati. Ganesha is synonymous with the first primal sound, the Big Bang. Om, Om. A-U-M-O-M. Ganesha was created off the mud earth of Ma Parvati. Earth is our first home, and also the wisdom of being grounded or earthy. Ganesha is first widely recognized form as animal, human, and divine, also synonymous with Om, but so too are we, animal, human, divine. Like the elephant, we first follow the leader who removes the obstacles. These firsts will hopefully whet your appetite to learn more of the amazing symbolism of Ganesha, as well as the other Hindu devas and devis. Now, let's lay a foundation for appreciating the ancient and contemporary Hindu yoga religion, the Nav Tattvas. Before we list the 10 words, let's pay respect to words and their meanings. Actually, this is the meaning of semantics, the science of word knowledge. The Hindu rishi Kalidasa became wise, though was initially considered a fool, through much effort and the grace of the Hindu devis Kali and Saraswati Ma. Kalidasa said, Vagarta vihiva sampriktau. Words and their meanings are ever united like a marriage. So too, the Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali, author of the much distorted Yoga Sutras, said, quote, Sabdayana nupati vastu sunyo vikalpaha. The illusion arises when word knowledge is devoid of facts. So much for today's so-called yoga. As humans, we converse, we convey ideas and meanings in the many games of life. Why not approach life as a good sport and strive to ethically play the many games, taking life seriously but not too seriously? We should respect our similarities and the differences or divisions, and of course not be blind to destructive divisions. Words can unite and lift us up, so to speak, and they can also do great harm. There is a time to speak out for justice and a time for unifying silence. To add a touch of mysticism, for which Hinduism is renowned, consider the word preface or preface. We could ask ourselves, who were we before we had a face? Before birth, in deep sleep, at physical death? Do many, if not all, religions and beyond seek answers to these questions? Coming out of that calm mind, let's enjoy this dance of life. The following Nav Tattvas, or 9 principles, will not only prove invaluable for understanding the Hindu Yoga Dharma, but also provide a logical foundation for navigating through life in general. 1. True. 2. False. 3. True false. 4. Delusion. First, consider that which is absolutely true and false. For example, it is absolutely true that the sun is hot, and it is absolutely false that it is cold. Or it is absolutely true that the earth is round and false that it is flat. In another example, it is absolutely true that yoga is Hinduism and false that it is not. So 1 and 2 are about absolutes. 3, true false, is the recognition of relative perception. For example, someone from the tropics coming north in the springtime, which may seem very warm to those coming out of winter, may consider the weather to be cold. Or there was a time when the earth was presumed to be flat due to a relative perception. And to those who practice Hindu yoga, they may do so on relative degrees. Number 4, delusion, however, is to be avoided. For example, one who continues to claim that the sun is not hot, that the earth is flat, and that yoga is not Hinduism. Now, the next 5 of the Nav Tattvas, we could call the Panch Tattvas, are wisdom, judgment, critical thinking, reason, logic, generalities, and specifics. Wisdom is, by definition, quote, the ability to discern, which means to recognize, difference, not sameness. In other words, wisdom is the antithesis of such thoughtless cliches as we are all one, we don't believe in labels. You are who you are because of your difference. We all choose many things and people in our life, and not because they're all the same. Judgment, by definition, is, quote, the ability to make wise decisions, end quote. Notice how judgment follows wisdom, wise decisions. In light of this wisdom, consider another thoughtless cliche, do not judge. However, is this not a judgment? Would any parent, for example, not want their children to learn to make wise decisions? Of course, we want to avoid making erroneous judgments and to be overly opinionated, but a healthy life is the result of making sound judgments. Critical thinking. Quote, the need to distinguish between rational and irrational beliefs through logic and a thorough testing of the claims made. End quote. This definition is pregnant with meaning. Of course, thinking is recommended. However, like the need for the critical care unit, sometimes we need to exercise critical thinking. Reason, logic. Notice in the above definition of critical thinking that one uses logic to reach a critical decision. Logic and reasoning are actually the scientific method, and classic logic is to arrive at a conclusion through perception, inference, comparison, testimony. Because the definition is logical, it can be found expressed in other languages, such as the Sanskrit of Hinduism. As we will see, Hinduism in 6 words, there are several Hindu philosophies, one of which is the Nyaya philosophy of logic. In Nyaya, we see classic logic expressed by the Sanskrit Hindu terms prataksha, anumana, upamana, and sabta, respectively. As a side note, the Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali refers to logic as a necessary foundation, pramana, when one comes out of a meditation into their everyday life. However, Patanjali tweaks Nyaya by eliminating upamana, which is comparison, and substituting agama for sabda or testimony. In today's spurious yoga movement, this adaptation is extremely significant. In other words, being a Saiva Hindu and knowing nothing of certainly the monotheistic religion, Patanjali felt no need to compare. And this Saiva Guru fully depended on the Saiva Hindu scriptures called agamas for final testimony. So much for any non-Hindu claim to yoga and any erroneous universal application. Finally, generalities and specifics. Certainly last but not least is this wisdom, sound judgment, critical thinking, and logic of never confusing generalities and specifics. To reiterate, one must respect when using the general secular language of English and when one is using the very specific Hindu religious language of Sanskrit. Becoming aware of an all too typical confusion of generalities and specifics brings not only a greater clarity but also a sense of respect. Another prime and relevant example, stretching and relaxation, is a very general English phrase, but yoga is specifically all about the very specific religion of Hinduism, and in this case specifically Hatha Yoga. Now, just like following an elephant associated with Ganesha, pade pade, or step by step, on to the Hindu yoga dharma in 10 words or less or more. Can you guess the first word? Actually, there are several one words that could describe the dharma, such as namaste and om. But the first one is bound to spark a lively discussion. Hinduism in one word, yoga. No yoga, no Hinduism. No yoga, no Hinduism. N-O-K-N-O-W. What? Unfortunately, this is a shocker. Tell the, quote, average person that yoga is all about the Hindu religion, and you will leave them confused at best. Further, if you make the statement that, quote, yoga has nothing to do with the body, you will likely encounter confrontation. Like so many misunderstandings and distortions about the Hindu yoga dharma, today yoga has come to mean an exercise routine and or vague so-called spirituality. This quote-unquote yoga is taught by basically anyone who takes a simplistically trivial 200-hour course. Consider it takes 1,500 hours to become a dog groomer. These individuals then teach in perhaps public venues, such as community centers, schools, and even hospitals, while many open their own studios. There is actually a governing body, non-Hindu of course, that offers these, quote, yoga certifications called the Yoga Alliance. What of any substance can one learn in 200 hours? You may enjoy our humorous podcast. I went to 6-week yogi school at Dharma Yoga Ashram. This modern yoga movement is relatively new. We have detailed this modern yoga in our many podcasts, such as The Con Art of Living. This spurious yoga can be traced back to the 1950s with Indra Devi, who learned from Krishnamacharya, who produced several prominent gurus like Iyengar and Desikachar. who came to America and expounded a non-Hindu yoga as exercise business. This so-called yoga gained further prominence in the West in the 1960s, with several Indian gurus coming to America. The most popular gurus were the Maharishi Mahesh, Bikram Chaudhry, Prabhupada, Muktananda, Rajneesh, aka Osho, Swamis Rama and Satchidananda, and Yogi Desai, to name a few. These gurus were all closet Hindus, if you will, with many totally denouncing Hinduism. These so-called gurus, hungry for fame and fortune, spawned any number of non-Indian and, of course, non-Hindu students who went on to create their own lucrative personality cults. Naturally, with such an unethical foundation, many of these teachers and organizations came crumbling down, riddled with sexual and financial scandals. You can listen to our many podcasts at Dharma Yoga Ashram to get a deep understanding of the problem. Of course, the problem behind all of these distortions and perversions were the silent Hindus who perhaps did not even know the facts. The facts are: 1. Yoga is a Sanskrit Hindu word. 2. The Sanskrit Hindu definition of yoga is, quote, Yuj Atman Brahman Cha, end quote. Yuj is the bija or root word for yoga, and it means to yoke, Y-O-K-E, or join together, which is very similar to the root word for religion, religio or religare, which means to tie or to bind together. So too, the Sanskrit Hindu word dharma, which comes from the root dri, meaning to hold. Hence, we see the similarity of the words religion, dharma, and yoga, but of course, always respecting the specifics. Cha is Sanskrit for and. So again, the definition of the Sanskrit Hindu word yoga is Yuj, Atman, Brahman, Cha, to yoke to the Atmana and Brahman. But what is the Atmana and what is Brahman? Here's a few quotes from the Hindu American Foundation on yoga. Quote, to a Hindu, yoga is the outward physical expression of a deep spiritual belief. You cannot separate one from the other. Of course, the proper term is Hatha Yoga. If one completely divorces the Hindu Dharma from yoga, it ceases to be yoga. You can't strip yoga off Hinduism. By doing so, you are robbing yoga of its essence. It has been stolen and appropriated from Hindu culture, and many people don't even realize that yoga originated from Hindu texts. This was all from the Hindu American Foundation. Now, standing in stark contrast to the above are many of the present-day so-called gurus and swamis and yogis, all Hindu titles, that for fame and fortune deny the factual, historical, logical, and honest recognition that Hindu equals yoga and yoga equals Hinduism. So Hinduism in one word is yoga, Hinduism in two words, Atmana and Brahman. Chances are that if one goes to a yoga studio and asks the yoga teacher, what is the language of yoga, and please define yoga, one will not get an honest and accurate answer. This fact should be an immediate red flag. Generally, one may say, oh, yoga means union. But what a vague answer. Not only is this not recognizing the Sanskrit definition of the Sanskrit word yoga, but rationally there are all manner of union. Bizarrely, in this age of information, why is yoga not clearly defined? Obviously, there is an anti-Hindu and anti-religious agenda. When yoga is factually and rightly identified with the Hindu religion, then it becomes clear who are the teachers and the in-depth commitment necessary for both student and teacher. With the factual definition of yoga, one is already deep into the Hindu religious philosophy. Yuj Atman Brahman Cha, what is Atmana? the Sanskrit Hindu word for the inner essence of all, both animal and human. Note the different spellings: Atmana, Atman, Atma. Remember the importance of respecting generalities and specifics. Atmana must not be confused with the words soul and spirit. Primarily, soul is the Christian concept of one's inner essence. However, it is still connected to the mind or the psyche and the breath. Atmana, however, literally means not mind. Mana is mind. Atmana. Therefore, to realize one's Atmana, one must, quote, go out of their mind, end quote. Imagine the discussion that takes place after such a statement. Some may say, see, I knew Hindus were out of their mind. As a Hindu, we can have some self-deprecating fun with such a statement. Remember, take life seriously, but not too seriously. But obviously, Atmana also implies that one is, in a sense, also out of their body and emotions. How does this philosophy line up with today's so-called yoga that is totally focused on the body? In today's spurious yoga, picture, personality, and price tag prevail. Quote-unquote, everybody wants to be a yoga teacher, open a studio, and become a guru. When the claim is made in the yoga philosophy to calm the mind, chitta vritta nirodha, it is not simply for the relaxing effects, but also to go further into the Atmana. In the Hindu yoga religion, we believe that all humans and animals are this Atmana. And this is the very purpose of yoga, to yoke, join, or yuj, the body, mind, and emotions to this inner reality, the Atmana. Therefore, we as Hindus consider all of us as jivatmas, or individual atmanas. Brahman, which has nothing to do with God, is a greater or collective source from which come the individual jivatmas. Hinduism in two words, Atman and Brahman. What is Brahman? Brahman is a neuter term for the greater or collective forces of Sat Chit Ananda. Brahman is not God. Please, fellow Hindus, God is defined as, quote, the one male, as opposed to goddess, creator being noun. God is a Christian monotheistic term. There was an Anglo-Saxon term, God, small g, to denote the various Germanic deities. However, in the 5th century, in the Codex Argentus, the Christians capitalized God to make sure everyone knew there was only, quote, the one true male creator being noun, end quote. Therefore, it is disingenuous and disrespectful for Hindus to use this term. Hindus have many terms for personal devas and devis, the proper Sanskrit term for male and female spirit beings. Brahman, on the other hand, represents the impersonal forces or being verb that become personal beings noun. And remember that behind Brahman, so to speak, is the absolute zero, Tat. It is not a coincidence that it was only the Hindu mind that could conceive of the no-thangness or void, sunya, or zero. Being stuck in the Roman numerals 1 and one way or monotheistic mindset, these cultures could not imagine the zero. Of course, without the binary wisdom of both 1 and 0, life as we know it and technology would not exist. Though the Arabs took credit for the number system, still often taught, Hindus should say, "You're welcome for this most vital contribution." Remember that we are using words to communicate, but the Hindus know that they are just words for, quote, Mauna Vakya Parabrahman, end quote. In other words, Hindus recognize that the Supreme Brahman is known how? Through silent speech. Yogi Gorakhnath also stated about this experience of the Atmana, Brahman and beyond is, quote, Yato vacho niyavartante aprapyas manasa saha. Meaning, this experience of the Atmana is beyond speech, even beyond the very mind that seeks to comprehend it. Are we starting to respect the vast differences between the monotheistic religions and God and the polymorphic Hindu Yoga Dharma and Brahman? Like all religions, Hinduism is a vast collection of people with varying beliefs. You will find those of a monotheistic mindset that believe their deity, and they may use the Christian term God, is the one that perhaps manifests in numerous forms. The Hare Krishna movement is infamous for such confusion. Interestingly, its founder, Prabhupada, claimed not to be a Hindu. The greater body of Hinduism is actually a monistic underlying force, polymorphism. Mature Hindus recognize a unifying force, Brahman, that assumes countless forms. This wisdom is found in the shloka Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedante, which means unified existence. Sages call by many names and forms. And remember, Hindus also wisely recognize the no-thingness. About such matters, about from where everything came, the wise rishis of the Vedas simply and profoundly said, Ka, who knows? So just what is this underlying force labeled Brahman? Now note that many in ISKCON have reformed themselves and used the word Hindu, but this was not their founder's position. In his book entitled Science of Self-Realization, SSR, this creator of the Hare Krishna movement, which is not to be confused with traditional Vaishnavism, said, quote, the Krishna's consciousness movement has nothing to do with the Hindu religions or any system of religion. Sound familiar? With the modern gurus and Sadguru? They say the same thing, basically. Prabhupada went on to say, one should clearly understand that the Krishna consciousness movement is not preaching the so-called Hindu religion. End quote. Unfortunately, today's massive spurious yoga movement was spawned and perpetuated by many Indians who, though everything they taught was Hinduism, denied they were Hindus and denied they were teaching Hinduism. One does not have to wonder why this crucial denial. Creating a quote-unquote universal movement brings in the masses, the money, and the recognition. It is not a coincidence also that these cultic organizations gave birth to horrific scandals that ruined the lives of many. Many sincere seekers were totally disillusioned by what could have been a meaningful life following the Hindu Yoga Dharma. A simple search will reveal the names of the perpetrators and their organizations, many of which are still in operation. Unfortunately, there was sexual exploitation, financial abuse, psychological manipulation, revisionist quote-unquote theology. In other words, there was charisma without accountability, power without institutional restraint, devotion without critical grounding, tradition without context, mysticism without humility. So Hinduism in 2 words was Atman and Brahman. Now in 3 words we're going to define what is this Atmana and Brahman. Hinduism in 3 words: Sat, Chid, Ananda. So what is the Atma and Brahman? It is Sat, which is the provable reality of pure existence. 2, it is Chid or Chit, which is consciousness, knowledge, and the pure energy of sound and light. And 3, it is Ananda, the warmth of pure bliss or love. Thus, the individual Atmana and its greater source Brahman is defined as Sat Chit Ananda, the inner knowledge and experience of pure existence, energy, light, heat, and bliss. Hindus also describe Satchit Anand as Shakti, pure energy of existence, Jyoti, light, and Ananda Shanti, the bliss of peace. The Atmana could also be said to be E equals mc squared. E, energy, Shakti, M, matter, Sat, and light, c squared, Jyoti. Now, let's look at the science. Prior to the Big Bang was the nothingness, not nothing. The Sanskrit Hindu word tat is sometimes used to denote this zero state of electromagnetic forces before creation. Like the mystical, spontaneous moment of waking and exhaling, for example, there was a Big Bang sound, perhaps an infinite number of such events, subsequently manifesting all things. Hindus consider Om, this primal pranava sound, the Big Bang. Subsequently and instantaneously, there was the pure energy of gravity and light, quickly followed by heat. Then, through the timeless ages of evolution, here we are. But the original source is still there or here. Before birth, after physical death, and each night when we go into the nothingness of deep sleep, we awake with a sound, bang, of energy, light, and heat. In other words, Tat Om Sat Chit Ananda. The heat is the inner experience of bliss or love, which is a warm experience. With confidence, then, we can declare that the inner essence of all is love, light, and energy. Om, this are we with emotions, mind, and body. Philosophically, we can ponder, are not we all seeking more energy? To feel light as opposed to depression, as well as the inner light of inspiration, creativity? And would not everyone agree that they seek love? Now, here is where the Hinduism answers a vital question. If we are all, in this case we'll use the word souls, if we are all souls, Atmana to the Hindus, of love, light, and energy, why evil? Or at best, bad behavior? Think a moment. Can we not all abuse energy? Can we be blinded by light and or blind others, such as charismatic individuals with nefarious motives? And cannot our love be very immature and even narcissistic? Hence the cliche, young and old souls. Here we also have to introduce the Hindu logical understanding of reincarnation or samsara, which is contrary to monotheism. Are we not learning and growing in this one life and changing form? Get a picture of yourself when you were a teenager. Can we learn everything we need to in one life? And what about a life cut short? What about the various talents of individuals? Samsara, reincarnation, answers many of these profound philosophical questions. So, the inner essence of all of us is the scientific reality that has become innumerable forms with subsequent names. Hence, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vedante. We are all this inner essence that Hindus call Atmana, with a specific body, mind, and emotions. The purpose of the Hindu yoga religion is to yoga, to this intellectual wisdom and internal experience. So again, we are Hindu. We do yoga, all of it. Our goal is Atmana or Atma Darshana. Hindu, yoga, Atman. As pointed out in the introduction, the use or not of the letter H does not necessarily change the meaning of certain Sanskrit words. From the Rig Veda, 984. Indu Hindu Samudra Idayarti Vayubhir. Hindu, with the support of the breath, grab a hold of the cosmic ocean within. Yoge Samana Parivam Sapta Shravato Ratoghat. Through the yogas, yoge, one finds within their body their beautiful, tranquil self, and the 7 flowing rivers, a reference to the chakras. Rig Veda 767, 8. Rig Veda 153, Sagano Yoga Abhuvat. Without yoga, nothing happens. That is the process. Rig Veda 110.10, Vidmahitva Sahasras Atman. Give us the wisdom of Atma Darshana. We're Hindus, we do yoga, all of it, to reach Atmana. Hinduism in 4 words: karma, bhakti, raja, jnana. The 4 classic Hindu yogas. Basically, the Hindu ethics, devotions, contemplations, and study or enlightenment. Though there are other goals within the Hindu yoga religion, a goal upon which all Hindus would agree is the very definition of yoga, Yuj Atman Brahman Cha. Again, the goal is Atma Darshana, insight. Realizing one's Atmana is the most important duty or dharma for every Hindu. Atma Darshana Paramo Dharma. For it is from this realization that one's actions dramatically change for the better. Another synonym for yoga is yajna, which means sacrifice or sacred doing. From the Rig Veda, yajnam vastu dhya vasubha, 1:3:10. It is a fact that yajnam yoga gives inner light. And again, sagano yoga abhuvat. Without yoga, nothing happens. And vidmihitva sahasras atman. Give us the wisdom of Atma Darshana. Okay, but how do we do this? How do Hindus accomplish this lofty goal of Atma Darshana? First, we must become a dedicated Hindu warrior, kshatriya. And the fundamental battle is actually within all of us. See the primal wisdom of religion, in that we are all seeking to understand what is holding, binding, religio, one together. Remember, Hindus have their own Sanskrit Hindu words for basically this same process. Yuj, yoga, to yoke. Dri, dharma, to hold. This tale of the warrior hero is as old as human imagination. Puram Bindu, Vajri Purush Tutaha. Rig Veda 1:11:4. Ancient Bindu Hindu, soulful warrior. Few know that the Hindu rishis would also refer to themselves as Bindus. So important is the red mark of the Hindu, the kumkum. Not only is this third eye point the place wherein dwell the command glands of the body, the pituitary and the pineal, Ajna Chakra, which means command center. The red kumkum is also symbolic of the first glimpse of the quote-unquote rising sun on the horizon. This mystical time of day, both quote sunrise and sunset, sandhya or connecting times, is not only a time to reflect on the reincarnating samsara cycles of life, but also the many illusions, maya, as the sun does not really rise. There is much more to this daily event. You may enjoy our podcast, quote, learning from Bhumi Mata, unquote. However, pause and reflect a moment on witnessing a, quote, sunrise or sunset. First, you would have to do some work. For sunrise, you'd have to rise early, travel to a beach perhaps. You obviously have to be fully devoted to this task. Sitting cross-legged on the beach, you may find yourself in a relaxed mood, drinking deep of the morning air. You may close your eyes and see an inner reflection of the outer light, and you may have one or more profound insights. What you have just done is to Hindus the classic Hindu yoga lifestyle. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga. To the Tamils, Charya Kriya Yoga Jnanam. And originally in the Vedas, it was a threefold system of Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda. And in that order, note in the Hatha Yoga, Vrikshasana, tree pose, shows that the mature Hindu does all the yogas all the time, like a mature fruit-bearing tree. Karma Yoga are the roots. The trunk reaching up is Bhakti Yoga. The extending branches and flowers, Raja Yoga, culminating in Jnana Yoga, or the state of enlightenment. And what's happening inside is the awakening of the chakras. This is also the Kundalini, which is considered to be, in an analogy, the sap of the tree. So 1, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the Hindu understanding of the natural law of cause and effect, with the important caveat that these actions either advance or retard one's realization of the Atmana. This is what makes it Karma Yoga. The Sanskrit Hindu word karma comes from the root kri, which means to work. All of life works. Each one of us must discover meaningful work on this life journey. Bad work would be bad karma. 2, Bhakti Yoga, Hindu devotions. Remembering to always respect generalities and specifics, we recognize devotion in general, and specifically Hindu devotions or bhakti. For example, Mass is a Christian and specifically Catholic devotion, while puja is specifically Hindu devotion. Devotion is actually a secret ingredient of life. For without devotion, in general, we will not fully accomplish anything. However, notice that this is the second yoga, for without an ethical foundation, one may be devoted to the wrong thing, be it an idea or a person. For example, reflect that career criminals are very devoted and often very intelligent. Of course, Bhakti Yoga focuses on Hindu religious devotion, such as daily puja in the home and mandir, temple, as well as individual acts of devotion through mantras, Hindu chants, various sadhanas, tapas, Hindu disciplines. And contrary to today's spurious non-Hindu yoga, Hatha Yoga asanas are factually devotions to the elements, nature, animals, Hindu devatas, and the Atmana. When one's devotions intensify, one naturally enters into the third yoga, Raja Yoga, which are Hindu contemplations. Note we use the English word contemplation. Latin, contemplum, or within the temple, which is a direct reference to concentrating on, quote, things spiritual, unquote. Often the word meditation is used. However, this can be very misleading at best. The English word meditation simply means to concentrate on anything. Because of a lack of education, even among some Hindus, one will often hear the phrase yoga and meditation, which is inaccurate at best. The phrase, if taught in a proper Hindu context, should read Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. Those pilfering yoga from the Hinduism, should honestly say they are teaching stretching and meditation. It is in the Raja Yoga of Hinduism that one explores the various states of mind and the esoteric inner workings, or the chakras and the nadis. The Yoga Darshana, aka Yoga Sutras, Classical Yoga, the Raja Yoga Patanjali, focuses largely upon Raja Yoga with, of course, a solid foundation in Karma and Bhakti Yoga. The outcome of Raja Yoga is the ongoing fruit of enlightenment, or Gyan, sometimes Jnana Yoga. Enlightenment. Jnana is both outer study, the Shastras, and the inner study, or inspiration. The English word enlightenment means just that. In light, we are meant to be. In other words, both outer and inner inspiration. Just as we need light to outwardly read or study, it is the inner light of the Atmana that manifests creative thoughts or insights and subsequent creations. Remember, too, that light is also the quality of buoyancy. Lightness as opposed to a darkness of heaviness and perhaps depression. Remember that darkness can be a profound experience, but can also be a blindness. So too can we be blinded by light, both materially, the sun in your eyes, and metaphorically being swayed by charismatic individuals with nefarious purposes. At this point, it is wise to understand the word cult, i.e., quote, intense devotion to a particular person, idea, or thing, unquote. Reflecting on this definition, there are positive cults in marriage, for example, and negative ones, where one gets led into a dangerous, irrational situation. So, like religion, cult is not necessarily a bad thing. After all, this is where we get the word culture. Remember, all these genres of life, including religion, are human creations with both good and bad tendencies. Within these classic four yogas, we have Mantra Yoga, Hindu devotional chants; Japa Yoga, Hindu devotional chants on beads or mala; Nada Yoga, Hindu devotional music; Natha Yoga, Hindu devotional dance; and Hatha Yoga, Hindu devotional postures. Following this, Hindu yoga, religious, spiritual, scientific, philosophical lifestyles, stimulates an inner awakening of the vital forces known as Kundalini Yoga. In other words, Kundalini is the outcome, not really something to be taught separate, of living this Hindu lifestyle. Therefore, to one degree or another, all Hindus are yogis, yoginis, inasmuch as they follow this Hindu religious lifestyle. However, all Hindus recognize that the yogi and yogini are renunciates. They are basically separate from society. Therefore, Hindus do not really call themselves yogis and yoginis, but respect the austerity of the aesthetic yogi-yogini. True to all religions, most anyone can study these teachings, but rational honesty declares that the teachers are Hindus. And also true to all religions, the teachings are offered on a donation basis. This is so that everyone is free to come, rich and poor alike, and also the profoundness of the teachings really cannot be bought. But donation is proper. That's the way the organizations continue. Now let's look at the secret yoga. A shocking fact is that of all the classic Hindu yogas, there was only one that the wise Hindu sages said to keep secret. Can you guess which one? The very one that is popular around the world under the guise of simply the Sanskrit Hindu word yoga. Of course, we know the proper title is Hatha Yoga. We have already discussed that by itself, yoga simply and profoundly means Yuj Atman Brahman Cha. This definition per se has nothing to do with the body. Of course, the prefix is necessary in order to clarify how Hindus are seeking this Atma Darshana. And why did the Hindu rishis say, keep Hatha Yoga secret? Because of the very outcome of today's so-called yoga. Hatha Yoga does deal with the physical body through its many postures or asanas. The rishis knew that this aspect of Hinduism would be abused by the naive and unprepared. Thus, today we have all manner of nonsense in the name of yoga, such as hot yoga, power yoga, goat yoga, and a host of personalized yogas, elevating individual personalities. This spurious yoga is big business with lots of merchandise attached to it. There have also been numerous sexual and financial scandals attached to this phony yoga. Unfortunately, many Hindus have jumped on the bandwagon. What would the ancient rishis say? What would Patanjali say? In order to understand and respectfully appreciate the Hatha Yogasanas, one must have a solid grounding in the worldview of the Hindu yoga dharma. The Hatha Yoga asanas are worshipful postures to nature, various creatures, demonstrating the Hindu wisdom of Atma flowing through all things. And there are numerous asanas to various Hindu deities and sages. The very meaning of Hatha is the worship of Siva, Vishnu, Hara, Hari, and the sun and the moon, Ta. These facts are often conveniently overlooked. Hatha Yoga is actually very advanced as it incorporates breathing techniques, pranayama, and various practices to stimulate the inner forces. Obviously, these areas are not to be taken lightly and simply turned into an exercise routine or vague so-called spirituality. Though sitting in one steady, comfortable posture, sthira sukhamasana, the only thing Patanjali ever said, is part of the Hindu lifestyle, the deep devotional and esoteric practices are not for the non-Hindu, and even for a beginning Hindu, so to speak. There are several Hindu texts, and the Yoga Sutras, of course, are not one of them, that do detail with the various asanas, chakras, nadis, such as the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Siva Samhita, Giranda Samhita, and the Siddhasiddhanta Bharati. Without exception, all these Hindu smritis say basically what Svatmanama of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika said, quote, Hatha Vidya Bhaveda Yavate Guya Niveda Tu Prakashavaranam. Meaning this knowledge of Hatha is powerful when kept secret, Guya, and loses power when displayed, end quote. These classic four Hindu yogas and their vital add-ons make up the Hindu yoga, religious, spiritual, scientific, philosophical lifestyle. Remembering to always respect generalities and specifics, this Hindu lifestyle can be seen elsewhere using the acronym EDME or EDME. Is it not observable that, universally, many both secular and religious individuals strive to be 1. Ethical, 2. Devoted, 3. Meditative, which produces the ongoing outcome of enlightenment. If you think deeply, you will see the wisdom of these universal principles to be respected in how they are specifically practiced. These four Hindu yogas are found in the Tamil languages Charya, Kriya, Yoga, and Jnana, respectively. And in the Vedas, there was the threefold system with the Sanskrit word Kanda, meaning root, replacing yoga. There was Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda. We know about karma and jnana, but upasana was brilliant. This Sanskrit Hindu word means worshipful meditation. Here we see what actually is the inseparability of three yogas: Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Hatha Yogasana. Think for a moment of this wisdom, which further clarifies the inseparability of yoga and Hinduism. To also appreciate the logical progression of the Hindu yogas, look to the Hatha Yogasana, Vrikshasana, or tree pose. The trees could be our Gurujis, teaching us about the reciprocal give and take: seeds, fruit, CO2, O2. They also teach about samsara, reincarnation, and the seed of the Atmana plus the methodology. In other words, planted in Dharma, we see the ongoing development of Karma Yoga roots, Bhakti Yoga tree trunk, reaching up to Raja Yoga branches, leaves, and flowers, and the fruit of enlightenment or Gyan Yoga. Hatha Yoga is the stake, perhaps, that supports the young tree, its posture. Mantra and Nada Yoga are the many sounds of the trees, and the Nata Yoga is the swaying of the trees. Kundalini is the unseen but vital inner force or sap. As the tree grows and matures through its life cycles, samsara, it produces more flowers and fruits. Of course, within the fruit is the seed, Atmana, that reincarnates. This is our life story. This growth is true intent of all Hatha Yoga, to learn from the inside and from the outside. In other words, nature, and in this case the trees, teach us not only a deep philosophical understanding of life in general, but also the specific Hindu religious lifestyle. Respecting that Hatha Yoga was meant to be a basically solitary mystical connection with one's Atmana, nature, the creatures, the Hindu deities, here are some examples of the inseparable Hindu link. Chandrasana, to the moon and Shiva. Surya Namaskar, to the sun and Vishnu. Tadasana, worship of the mountains. Vrikshasana, worship of the trees. Matsyasana, worship of the fish. Bhujangasana, worship of the snakes. Skandasana, worship of Muruga. Mayurasana, worship of the peacock and Krishna. Hanumanasana, worship of Hanumanji. Padmasana, the worship of the lotus flower and Mother Lakshmi. Now tell the above to your priest, rabbi, or imam. First, we have to recognize this is all Sanskrit, the language of Hinduism, and changing the names is dishonest at best. For example, simply saying mountain pose, tree pose, fish pose. Then don't call it yoga anymore. Just call it stretching and relaxation. Changing the names, of course, is dishonest. Would one consider underwater therapy baptism? How about knee bends, genuflecting? Wine tasting communion? In other words, either exercise and leave the yoga out of it, or do the work, become a Hindu, and then teach Hatha Yoga in its proper context. Hinduism in 5 words: Saiva, Vaishnava, Shakta, Smarta, Nastika. The 5 sampradayas or sects of the Hindu yoga religion. Speaking of Hindu religious views, true to all religions, there are several Hindu sects called sampradayas. Though there are also subsects of these, it is a testament to Hindu Dharma that there is generally a greater sense of unity than, say, for example, the tens of thousands of Christian sects. Of course, we again recognize that, like all human institutions, religions and their sects are human creations. In these religious creations, there will be different views and debates, which can be civil and instructive, or sometimes hostile and destructive. When it comes to the many divine images in the Hindu yoga religion, a bit of clarification is necessary. Hindus often sarcastically are called idol worshippers and pray to 33 million gods. Of course, gods is the wrong word. We would say devatas, deva devi. But a humorous retort could be, no, 33 million and one. In this case, Hindus become not idle, but very vigorous worshippers. Actually, the phrase 33 million Hindu gods was a total misnomer and was supposed to read 33 koti, meaning types. These 33 types are profound classifications of observable things. Though there are different interpretations, basically it's the 5 elements, plus the sun, the moon, and stars, that's 8, the 12 months of the year, the 5 senses, and the 5 breath cycles. The basic 2 breaths, inhale and exhale, the Ashvin twins, and the inner essence, Atmana. Remember, life in general, and Hindus see it as polymorphic, as opposed to the irrational mono view of life. Except as an indicator, there is no one of anything. Everything is a composite. The variety of life, seen and unseen, is inexhaustible. Life is multitudinous. A mono or singular view, especially when it comes to religion, is generally a power play and has ignorance, fear, and arrogance at its core. Many Hindus, too, confuse the terms monotheism and monism. Monotheism is the belief in, quote, one creator being noun. Except for those Hindus with a negative sectarian view, the broader Hindu view is monistic polymorphism. Remember, theos is also God, so we shouldn't say polytheism, polymorphism. Those Hindus with a monotheistic mindset also confuse Brahman with God, as well as conflating a specific devata with God. Remember again, God is a Christian term, and Christians would never agree, for example, that Krishna is God, a notion that creates a monotheistic view. Though Hindus recognize many devatas, the primary word Brahman is a neuter, monistic term that recognizes an underlying force, Satchidananda, that then assumes innumerable name and form, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahura Vedante. With this understanding, clearly Brahman is not God and vice versa. Profoundly, our Hindu rishis went an important step further by saying Maunavakya Parabrahman. The supreme Brahman is known through silent speech. Sometimes the best solution is just to keep our mouths shut, especially when it comes to religious debate over who is the creator. Within Hinduism, we of course recognize creation. We use the word Brahma, watch the spellings, as the creator, but only as a creative process. The story of Sivalaya or Kartik Deepam puts to rest any notion of the creator, as Brahma was kicked out of the pantheon for lying. In the 3 Sampradayas, the Devatas are viewed as representing all 3 ongoing qualities, realities of creation, preservation, destruction. But also remember that when it came to ultimate questions about how everything began, the wise Hindu rishis honestly said, Ka, who knows? Importantly, regarding the many Hindu images we call murtis, these are highly symbolic figures that show a love and expertise in craftsmanship, as well as containing highly symbolic teachings. Remember the quote, a picture is worth 1,000 words, end quote. It must be recognized that humans are storytellers, hopefully meaning not lying, as well as expressing creativity in the arts. To one degree or another, humans have their stories and images that reflect who they are and in what they believe. Of course, in the religious realm, these spirit beings also become very personal to their respective devotees. It is in this aspect of focusing on the indivisible or the invisible, but clearly meaningful, that one must be very careful not to create an unhealthy cultic mindset wherein one only respects the images related to one's specific religion and arrogantly dismisses those of another. Along with other Hindu scriptures, the Puranas are the many stories about the basically three sampradayas, or Hindu sects, and their devatas. Saivite or Shaivite Hindus. They worship Ganesha, Muruga, Shiva, and Parvati. Of course, it has to be recognized that all the Hindu deities have numerous names and forms, and one should do their own research into these many names and forms. The major Saiva scriptures are, of course, the Vedas, but also the Saiva Agamas, Puranas, Tirukurau, Tirumantram, and Tirumurai. Vaishnava Hinduism. They worship Ganesha, Krishna, Radha, Hanuman, Ram, Sita, Vishnu, and Lakshmi. The major scriptures of the Vaishnavas are the Vedas, the Mahabharata, which of course has the Gita, and the Ramayana. Shaktite Hindus. They worship Ganesha, Kali, Durga, Parvati, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. Along with the Vedas, Shakti Hindus focus on the numerous tantras. 4. Smarta Hinduism. Smarta, from the Smriti or scriptures, is an effort to amalgamate the three sampradayas. Smarta Hindus bring together all the Hindu devas and devis. Smarta was perhaps developed to help counter any sectarian violence. However, a mature Hindu can see the wisdom of intense focus and subsequent realizations by following one of the sampradayas, as well as the unifying effect of the Smarta Sampradaya. Notice that all the sampradayas begin with Ganesha. Ganapati is truly Mahavallabha, or the foundational deva for all Hindus. Ganesha as Vigna Vinayaka is seen as the humble remover of obstacles before any undertaking. Please review the wisdom of Ganesha prior to the preface. Note also that the wisdom of the progression of the worship of the deities. They actually correspond to the science of the dynamic forces of gravity, electricity, magnetism, or we could call this the gem principle. For example, Ganesha is always gravity, Muruga, the electricity at the heart, and Shiva Parvati, the magnetic head. The same wisdom can be applied to the other sampradayas as well. Note this principle is one of ascension. However, in the Shakti Sampradaya, we see the wisdom of before creation, Kali, and the Lingam, the Big Bang, Durga Ma, and the refinement through evolution, Parvati Ma. Number 6 is Nastika. Nastika means unorthodox, and this is the recognition of the three religions that have their roots in Hinduism. Some of these religions and their adherents do pay great respect towards Hinduism, while others may seek to completely avoid any connection. This is much like the emergence of Christian cult from its Jewish roots. Remembering, again, the definition of cult is not necessarily a negative thing. The three cults that arose from Hinduism are Buddhism, the Buddha, Jainism, Mahavira, and the Sikh, Guru Nanak. Hinduism in 6 words. The Shad Darshanas: Nyaya, Vaisesika, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Sankhya, Yoga. The Shad Darshanas, or the 6 insights or philosophies. The 6 orthodox systems of Hindu philosophy. This is especially relevant, for example, to those who say they are Vedantists but not Hindus, or they do yoga or are yogis but are not Hindus. Each of these philosophical systems are a lengthy study in themselves. Unlike the Vedas, which are considered Shruti, inspirational scriptures, without known authors, the Shad Darshanas are Smriti, with known human authors. Of course, many Hindus accept the fact that all scriptures are written by humans, and for mature Hindus they are a tool and never to be forced upon anyone. We can use the scriptures or not. though most of us will refer to them and draw upon the many profound shlokas and inspirational stories. With these thoughts in mind, we have 1. Nyaya, by Gautama, not the Buddha, which details logic and reasoning, or epistemology. Vaisesika, by Kannada, which focuses on the objects of logic and knowledge, or cosmology in physics. 3. Mimamsa, by Jaimini, which delves into the importance of rituals and why we do them. In other words, Hindu devotions. The 4th philosophy is Vedanta by sage Vasya, which, in a sense, summarizes the goal of the Hindu religious lifestyle. The classic Upanishads, the end of the Vedas, constitute Vedanta and describe the Guru-Shishya relationship. Always keeping in mind that the disciple first undergoes serious study and practice of the Hindu basics before being fully initiated into receiving the wisdom of the Guru. 5 is Sankhya by sage Kapila. This focuses on the duality of the Atmana and Prakriti, or the world. Sankhya goes into great detail explaining the many tattvas, or life principles. Often coupled with the Yoga Darshana, in this science of enumeration, one encounters the principles of Purusha and Prakriti and the Gunas. Finally, we have the 6th Shaddarshana, the Yoga Darshana, or the Yoga Sutras by the Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali. It is this last philosophy that those in the New Age spurious yoga movement are attracted to. Unfortunately, this profound insight has often been distorted beyond recognition to fulfill the agenda of separating yoga from the Hindu religion. Bizarrely, the Yoga Sutras make no mention of any specific Hatha Yogasana, and yet this is the primary focus of today's so-called yoga business. The rise of yoga stars and commercialization are the antithesis of the intent of Patanjali, as he instructed his male Hindu celibate yogis in training to shun the body and to seek anonymity. Tad evarta matra nirbasa svarupa sunyam iva samadhi, meaning going beyond light and entering into the wealth of no thangness, or the void, is calm wisdom. The final liberation, or kaivalya, is to be as nothing, purush artha sunyam. So much for becoming a 200-hour professional yogi, making a 6-figure income. An interesting inside, perhaps, fact about the Shaddarshanas is that they are inspired by the 6th-faced deity Shanmukhanada, better known as Murugaskanda, the youthful loving warrior. Why? Like Hanumanji, Krishnaji, and Durga Ma, Muruga is a heart chakra anahata. With the aforementioned qualities, ponder, does not a philosopher exhibit these qualities? Youthful, loving warrior? Actually, philos means love, and these are all qualities to which we should all aspire. Of course, this is a very cursory look at these 6 orthodox systems of Hindu philosophy, as they are known in books on comparative religions. But like all 10 words, this is to whet your appetite, if you will, inspiring further research. And we also have to note that within each sampradaya, there are numerous philosophies, such as Saiva Siddhanta and the Vaishnava philosophies of Ramanuja and Madhva, for example, and the various tantric philosophies within the Shakti Sampradaya. And there's also a Hindu philosophy, Charvakya, that is purely materialistic in nature. And regarding Nastika, there are numerous darshanas within the Buddha, Jaina, and Sikh dharmas. Considering that philosophies in general, and Hindus specifically, display a useful, loving warrior spirit, there have been and will be many Hindus that display this spirit, such as Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, Nagarjuna, Adi Shankara, Krishnamurti, Ram Mohan Roy, Kabir, and many more to come. Hinduism in 7 words, the chakras. The 7 chakras are dynamic forces within every one. The Sanskrit Hindu word chakra means wheel. Chakras can also be analogous to flower buds. This is an intriguing study, and one that is very attractive to those in the New Age non-committal movements like today's yoga. Along with Kundalini, the serpent power, flowing through the chakras, these esoteric aspects of the Hindu yoga religion are very enticing, but need to be handled with care and only taught by a guru to those grounded in the Hindu yoga dharma. Therefore, we will not go into depth, but leave that up to the guidance of one's guru. For taken out of context, these forces can be misused, causing anything from confusion to an overinflated sense of self, which has all manner of detrimental ramifications. Understand that this is not an area of Hinduism for fear, but rather to be respected and learned in a progressive manner. A meaningful analogy here is that one will do damage to their body if they simply attempt to run a marathon. But with proper, slow training and guidance, one may one day achieve this goal. The 7 chakras are very detailed, and one should learn about them from their guru. Actually, one's guru may know of 9 chakras. Therefore, we will only give the important basics of these 7 chakras. 1. Muladhara, meaning root container. The root chakra at the anal region, connected to the earth element, sense of smell, memory, and elimination. 2. Svadhisthana, meaning favorite resort. Located at the genitals and connected to water, taste, the life force, and reason. 3. Manipura, gem center. Located at the solar plexus, gut, and connected to fire, sight, and willpower. 4. Anahata, meaning no hit, at the heart, and associated with air, touch, and the pure experience of love. 5. Visuddha, meaning purification, at the throat, and associated with the ether, akasha, hearing and purification. Number 6. Ajna, the command center, at the third eye, the bindi, the mark of the Hindu. This area and the next are beyond the 5 senses and the elements. It is the area of spiritual perception, or more accurately, prajna and atma darshana. 7. Sahaswara, meaning 1,000 petals. At the crown of the head, or the fontanella. At this spot, the endorphins, one experiences bliss and deep spontaneous insight, as well as the calm of sunyam. These chakras also, for the most part, correspond to Hindu devas and vahanas, or animal vehicles. In other words, a superficial and actually disrespectful study of the chakras that eliminates the profound Hindu connection is simply another example of the unhealthy and dishonest religious appropriation. Hinduism in 8 words, the scriptures. Vedas, Agamas, Tantras, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Tirukural, Tirumantram, Puranas. The Vedas are not only the oldest Hindu scripture, but as far as we know, the oldest surviving religious scriptures still followed by countless individuals. Dating the Vedas and the subsequent Hindu scriptures has always been up for debate, but that should be no cause for contention. Who knows for how long these and other scriptures were recited orally before they were ever written down. In a mature manner, one must also recognize the many ancient traditions that did not write down their insights. The Aboriginals from Australia and other indigenous people, for example, date their cultures back thousands of years BCE, and therefore are no less profound than the more recognized and populated world religions. In other words, claim that Hindu Dharma is the oldest religion is perhaps erroneous at best. Hindus that make such claims as a badge of honor should also ask themselves if they are actively working for the upliftment of the Hindu Yoga Dharma. Again, all scriptures were written by humans, but Hindus generally classify those with no known authors as Shruti, and these would be the Vedas and Agamas, and perhaps some Tantras. All the scriptures with known authors are called Smriti. Unlike the monotheistic religions, one basically does not look to one authoritative scripture. Like the very polymorphic nature of Hinduism and life, Hindus have many scriptures. These 8 are some of the most popular, but by no means exhaustive. As a living religion, Hindus also accept new scriptures written by devout Hindus, be they, quote, official clergy or a layperson. Most Hindus, not all, look at these scriptures as tools to enhance their religious life, but never to be used as weapons to attempt to prove a sense of superiority of an individual and or sect. In fact, mature Hindus recognize that one does not even have to read the scriptures to have Atma Darshana. For example, the yogi or yogini in the forest may have no books with them at all. As one mystic said, open the book inside of you. Of course, one must honestly recognize that the many mantras, stories, and other references are coming out of these scriptures. Some Hindus have a tremendous thirst for study. Others may not. The bottom line is that divinity, if you will, cannot be logically confined to any book. In a sense, the monotheistic religions are people of the book, while Hindus are people of the look. Sorry. Come apart from clever argumentation of contending theology, and for a brief while look inward. That one look shall drive the nail into the coffin of birth and forever end its cycle recurring. Tirumantram, Tantra 6, verse 1631. Since all scriptures are written by humans, as humans, we often make mistakes. Every writer knows that they often have to do a rewrite to correct former mistakes, and perhaps they may have gained a completely different realization. In other words, a fanatical attempt to make any scripture the authoritative one is just that. Generally, Hindus are also well versed in the scriptures of other religions, as their thirst for knowledge is not limited to the Hindu Yoga Dharma. Again, in these 10 words, the goal is to stimulate your interest. Then it is up to you whether to dive deeper into any or all of these Hindu scriptures. It is also noteworthy to recognize that the Hindu scriptures and puja still survive in the original Sanskrit and Tamil, perhaps, whereas in the Christian religion, the scriptures have gone through many revisions and language adaptations, leaving open the tendency for many errors at best. Vedas. The Vedas are the world's oldest surviving scriptures, still followed by countless individuals. No one really knows how old are the Vedas, but they go back thousands of years BCE. Imagine, however, the amount of time prior to their writing when the Sanskrit language had to be created and written, as well as the immense amount of introspection that preceded the writing down of these Sanskrit verses. The same intensity and testament of human solidarity could be said of other languages and subsequent religions of the world. The meaning of Veda is descriptive of this human pursuit for knowledge. In Sanskrit, vidya is knowledge. However, Veda is knowledge on steroids, if you will. In other words, Veda means a passion to know. Interestingly, the word science literally means to know. And of course, religion, indicates an attempt to know by getting one's act together, so to speak. One may ask to Hindus to know what? The answer, rig, or to worship. Remember in the 4 yogas we wrote about the importance of devotion in general, Bhakti Yoga or Upasana Kanda specifically. The first word of the Rig Veda is Agni Mile. In other words, a passion to worship or know the fire, the wisdom of fire as the primal deity, if you will. no fire, no life. Daily, Hindus light a diya, representing uncovering the inner light, Antar Jyoti. There are 4 Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharvana, each one ending in the classic Upanishads, which are often studied in and of themselves and form the Vedanta Darshana, or philosophy. The Mahavakyas. These are the 4 great Maha sayings, Vakya, that encapsulate the primary Hindu beliefs. And again, one who states they have no beliefs is living in a delusion, and often a scam to indoctrinate followers into the beliefs of the leader. The Mahavakyas are found in the Upanishads, which comprise the end of the Vedas. Tattvamasi, that thou art. This Vakya comes from Chandogya Upanishad, which is a favorite as it explains the different types of Shishyas or disciples. In Chandogya Upanishad is also an amazing dialogue of Indra and Virochana, who learned from their guru, and in the case of Indra, he learned for 101 years. Though over the top, to prove a point, this should, quote, blow out of the water, unquote, the modern phony 200-hour professional certified yoga teachers. But what does it mean that thou art? Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am Brahman. This comes from the famous Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad. It is in this great forest wisdom that we get the oft-repeated shloka Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. In other words, we pray to be led from, respectively, untruth to truth, ignorance to enlightenment, and from the illusion of death to the immortality of the Atmana. So what is this Brahman? This is the 3rd Mahavakya. Ayam Atma Brahman. This Atman is Brahman. This Mahavakya comes from the popular and very important Mandukya Upanishad, or frog scripture. Like the frog sitting quietly on all fours, this shortest Upanishad presents the primal sound Om, Pranava Om. This 4-part sound, A-U-Um, is said to be the origin of sound and fully associated with the primal deity Ganesha. A-U-Um and the silence in between, Turiya, Vaishvanara, Tejasya, Prajna, is the very essence of Hinduism. And what is this Atmana and Brahman? It is Prajanam, Brahman. Brahman, and thus Atmana, is pure existence, consciousness. This consciousness, bliss, assumes pure energy, both sound, light, and the heat of bliss, thus Satchidananda, the inner essence of all. Prajna is experienced at the 3rd eye point and through the body, hence the wearing of the bindi, the mark of the Hindu. When Hindus say Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanikam, we are stating that we are all this Atmana. The last Mahavakya comes from Taittiriya Upanishad from Yajur Veda. Adi Shankara recognized this Upanishad as encapsulating the fullness of Hindu Dharma. From the beginning, as a student following the Dharma and the Guru, one is then able and bound to protect and promote the Dharma. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the 2nd type of samadhi, Asamprajnata Samadhi, lists prajna as the last step after one attains full samadhi. In other words, like the Bodhisattva, one comes down, so to speak, from the heights of realization, the Sahasrara Chakra, to prajna at the bindi, and gives forth the teachings. Having found a sattvic balance between the eyes, one realizes the wisdom of both understanding the world of duality as well as transcending the world. The Agamas. Though not as well known as other Hindu scriptures, the Agamas are considered the 5th Veda and of primary importance. Many consider the Agamas to equal the Vedas in antiquity. That which has come down, or Agama, details most all of the Hindu yoga dharma from philosophy and practices to rituals, including mandir construction. The three branches of agamas detail the three sampradayas. There are 28 Saiva agamas, 64 Shakta agamas, and 108 Vaishnava agamas. They are written in both Sanskrit and Tamil and are primarily studied in the south of India. Tantras, clearly associated with Saivas, and these, quote, nets of esoteric wisdom, unquote, expanded out into the other sampradayas and even influencing Buddhism. Forming about 2,000 years ago, Tantra focuses on rituals, mantras, and various aesthetic practices. As with all the Hindu scriptures, the extensive tantric literature would provide a lifetime study to take in all of the complexity. Number 4, the Ramayana. Again, dating Hindu scriptures is not easy, and the dates can range wildly. Therefore, let's only say that the original Sanskrit Ramayana of Valmiki dates back to the BCE era. The more popular Hindi version by Tulsidas came later in the 1500s CE. The Ramayana is very well known, an epic drama featuring Ram, Sita, Hanuman, Lakshmana, and Ravana. There are profound life lessons told in this story. This is a Vaishnava scripture, and to many, not all Hindus, including Valmiki, Ram is seen as an avatar or incarnation of Vishnu, and in their words, God on earth. Later, Krishna would fulfill that role. Therefore, in the Vaishnava Sampradaya, we do find a monotheistic mindset. Remember, the Hindu Yoga Dharma, in a sense, has it all. Number 5, the Mahabharata. Again, dating Hindu scriptures is very controversial, so let's just say it was in the BCE era, coming after the Ramayana. This is a great epic tale of the two dynasties, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The central portion of this great history, some fact, some fiction, of India, is about the Kurukshetra, or war between these dynasties, with the central figures of Arjuna and Krishna playing major roles. This Bhagavad Gita section is highly revered and well known. It is, of course, Vaishnava, but contains many valuable life lessons for all, including the importance of yoga in the Hindu lifestyle. It is this sole focus on the Gita that created the popular cult of ISKCON in the 1960s. Highly sectarian, this group initially divorced itself from Hinduism, but in subsequent years has reformed itself and often claims to be part of Hinduism. The Puranas. From the 4th century BCE to the 11th century CE, we find the many Puranas. These are the very popular stories about most of the well-known Hindu devas and devis. There are said to be 108 Puranas, which go into depth about to what many Hindus consider their Ishta Devatas. Human history is replete with stories, some factual and many symbolic and inspirational. Wisdom is never confusing the two. 7 and 8, Tirukural and Tirumantram. These are lesser-known Hindu scriptures from the early CE era, but equally valid and very important in the lives of especially Saiva Hindus. The Tirukural, written by Rishi Tiruvallur, is a composite of ethical codes of conduct. In fact, in South Indian courts of law, it is the Tirukural, Turu meaning holy, that is sworn upon. From the Tirukural, be unremitting in the doing of good deeds. Do them with all your might and by every possible means. Verse 33. The Tirumantram, written by Tirumular, is a practical and very mystical treatise to Siva. Just as the Bhagavad Gita is all about Krishna, so too the Tirumantram is all about absolute devotion to Siva. Many may not realize that there is also an Ishvara or Siva Gita. An interesting and profound but little-known fact is that Tirumular was a guru brother to Patanjali. Their guru was Tirunandi, thus making the unmistakable Saiva Hindu connection to the Yoga Sutras. Search where ye will, there be no deva like Siva, none here below to equal him in glory. Tirumantram, Preface, verse 4. It is verses like this, as well as those in the Bhagavad Gita, that emphasize the superiority of Krishna that can lead to sectarian extremism. For example, the Gita, chapter 10, quote, "Those who know me as unborn and beginningless, and as the supreme God, Lord of the universe, I will unfold to thee some of the chief aspects of my glory. Of its full extent there is no end." Krishna then goes on to state that he is basically everything and responsible for everything that exists. Mature Hindus must remember that, true to all religions, our scriptures are written by humans and to be taken seriously but not too seriously. Religious violence against another or within are too often the result of literal reading of one's scriptures. Remember, how can any divinity be contained within written works of a human? In order to have a united Hindu family, every Hindu must understand the concept of not only Ishtadevata, but also that Hindus should not be misusing the Christian term God. Just as one can have a spouse who is their all in all, this should never translate into the one for all. We can have tremendous love and dedication towards our devatas without making them exclusive and for all. This, of course, goes for our attitude towards our Hindu yoga religion, which is a way, not the way. Remember, too, that the many yogas are the lifestyle of Hindu Dharma. It is this religious lifestyle that brings us together as Hindus, where we seek the absolute no-thingness, the being verb, of Satchidananda, and then the many forms in both the material and the spirit plane. Om Bhur Bhuva Svaha, O divine beings of all three worlds. From the Tirumantram, sitting cross-legged with soles of feet turned up, close draw the feet on thighs opposite, stretch then the hands of four on feet. That Padmasana is famed far on earth. Verse 559. And again, in the undistracted gaze appears the light. Gaze and gaze to heart's content, and mingle one with it. The heavenly stream will then surge through the spaces infinite of void vast. Then may the uncreated being verb witness be. Verse 600. There are numerous other scriptures, like the Dharma Shastras, and numerous works by Hindu priests, pundits, if you will, yogis and swamis. These prolific Hindu scriptures, along with our many devatas, are testament to the profound wisdom of the Hindu yoga dharma. Remember, life is polymorphic, and there is not, except as an indicator, exclusively one of anything. Everything in life is a composite. Life is circular and not linear. In other words, monotheism, though linear thinking has its place, we should then respect and learn about the various religions, where they share commonalities and also where there are striking differences. For example, from the Torah, quote-unquote, affectionately renamed the Old Testament by the Christians, Deuteronomy chapter 12, 1-3. These are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land which the Lord God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that ye live upon the earth. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their God, upon the high mountains and upon the hills, and under every green tree, and ye shall overthrow their altars, break their pillars, burn their groves with fire, and ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and destroy the names of them out of that place. From the Christian New Testament, as we have said before, so say now I again, if any man preach any other gospel of Jesus Christ, unto you than ye have received, let him be accursed. Galatians chapter 1 to 9. From the Quran of the Muslims. Whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted from him. And in the hereafter, he will be one of the losers. Surah 380. Surah 3, 165. And do not think that those who have been killed in the way of Allah as dead. They are rather living with their Lord, well provided for. In a way, do not all religions in general follow the Edmi process? Ethics, devotion, meditation to enlightenment? Here we have a commonality. But we also need to respect the very specific differences within the various religions. This is doing your Purva Paksha. Hinduism in 9 words. The various aspects of Dharma. We have Rita Dharma, Svadharma, Ashrama Dharma, Varnashrama Dharma, Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, Sannyasin. Remember, the Sanskrit Hindu word dharma comes from dri, or to hold. Also remember the similarity of the words yoga, yuj, to yoke, religion, religio, to bind or tie, and kunda, root. Not confusing generalities with specifics, Hindus call their tradition dharma. Like scientific discovery, philosophical and social behavior, Hindus examine what seems to hold life together. Hence, Hinduism in 9 words. We look at Rita Dharma, the way of nature. Humans trying to figure out their place on earth and how to relate to it. Yogis epitomize this love and understanding of Bhumi Mata, or Mother Nature, as many go into nature and learn to live in harmony. Remember, all religions are made up of people that follow the religion in varying degrees. For example, in India today, yes, it is crowded, but that is no excuse for insulting Mother Earth by littering, to say the least. Rita Dharma, Svadharma, is one's personal lifestyle choices. Each one of us must find the individual areas of life that we find interesting and worthy of incorporating into our lives. This is not only one's profession, but one's other extracurricular activities, if you will, including physical, mental, and emotional pursuits. However, it must be remembered that to be dharma, all these activities would be performed with an underlying Hindu attitude. 3. Ashrama Dharma. These are the 4 logical stages of life. In all societies, one can see these natural progressive stages of life, from student to career, and generally family life, to retirement, to end of life. An ashram is, of course, a place of Hindu learning. In this case, Hindus use the word ashrama as a metaphor for each of these life stages, which are viewed as temporary houses one lives in. With understanding and guidance, each of these houses, when successfully lived in, naturally lead to the next house. In other words, each ashrama prepares one for either success or failure in the subsequent life stages. For continuity, we will present the 4 ashramas now, followed by the 4th dharma. First ashrama is brahmacharya, the student stage. Of course, we all want to continue to learn throughout our life, but around the world, basically all children begin to actively study. Often this formal period of studentship lasts into one's 20s. This understanding of the student phase should cause all of us to realize that in many ways, once these stages are over, there's generally no going back. In other words, to reap the full benefits, one should be ardently dedicated to each of the life stages. In the Hindu yoga religion, brahmacharya also means celibacy, something Patanjali advocated for all of his students. Though not often consciously equated with this first stage of life, a little reflection reveals the wisdom of not having sexual relations during this most intense time of study. Hindus are generally not prudish about sexual experiences, but the wisdom of keeping one's virginity through the student stage is expected and encouraged. Having intimate sexual relations during this time is very distracting at best, and with the possibility of pregnancy, one's life can be dramatically altered. Though as students we naturally can't see into the future, it is the role of parents and elders to help guide young people through this very important foundational ashrama. Next comes grihastha. This is the family and career stage of life. After one's period of study, one generally enters the workforce. Now one can clearly see the wisdom of putting as much effort into the student stage in order to procure a successful and meaningful occupation. This longest ashrama is generally a time of marriage. Now it is wise to reflect on the wisdom of celibacy, meaning no intimate sexual relations with another. During the first stage, does it not make sense that if one has had several intimate relations, it will be more difficult to find a partner that has yet to have these experiences? And it is a known fact that promiscuous individuals who do commit to another often have a very difficult time in maintaining a lasting relationship. It is not a coincidence that divorce is rare among Hindus and fairly common in the typical American culture. The next stage of life is vanaprastha. This is the retired ashrama. Generally in one's 60s, there comes a time when one's children are grown and perhaps with homes and children of their own. The empty nest syndrome is typical in many countries, while in others extended families are the norm. Whatever the case, if married, family responsibilities are greatly diminished. If possible, it is now grown children that should look after the welfare of the parents who took care of them for so many years. So too, at this stage of life, one generally retires from the workforce but can often remain as an advisor to the younger grihasthas. Once again, the progressive nature of the ashramas clearly make evident the need to take each one seriously. Just consider the ramifications of multiple relations and extended families with the ensuing drama. So too, if one has been unsuccessful in their career and suffered from poor handling of one's finances, these otherwise, quote, golden years, unquote, can become, quote, rusty years, unquote. Rather than being able to experience a more stress-free and comfortable retirement, vanaprastha, one may have to continue in the workforce as well as mending many relationship fences. In other words, vanaprastha should be a time of enjoying one's family and the fruits of one's labor. It should also be a time of giving back, perhaps financially, and or imparting the wisdom of a life well lived. 7. Sannyas is the end of a lifetime. This ashrama is the last for this life, according to Hindus who believe in samsara. Because of advances in medicine, this period is now generally from the 70s till one leaves their physical body. Of course, not everyone lives through all of these ashramas, and again, this is where the Hindu wisdom of samsara comes into play. Hindus believe that we have numerous lives in order to have the many experiences necessary to have in-depth atmadarshana or spiritual realization. Regardless of how long one lives, it is the quality of one's life that is of utmost importance. In other words, better to live a quality life as a brahmachari than to have 4 miserable stages of life. Of course, what should be evident is the all-important spiritual thread that must weave through all 4 ashramas. Mature Hindus know that it is this religious spiritual thread that is the impetus behind studying and keeping celibacy during the first ashrama. It is this understanding that we are the Atmana that helps maintain a good relationships and striving to be dedicated and honest in one's dealing with the material world. It is this Atmadarshana that allows one to be content in vanaprastha and able to give back profound life wisdom. In sannyas, every Hindu, in a sense, becomes a swami, swamini. Now the spiritual thread should be strong, as one is looked to as a source of inspiration and guidance. With a life well lived, sannyas becomes a natural transcendence. Remember, that means to climb, not skip over, transvalue. One has traversed now the many paths in life's experiences. One is also fully prepared for whatever is to come. Ideally, one has few regrets. One has learned much through experience, through gain and loss, success and failure. And one has been open to serving others as well as being served. Number 8, sannyasin. These are those that choose not to enter into the 4 ashramas, not grihastha life. It should be clear that the 4 ashramas are for the vast majority of humanity that enter into family and material career. However, in all cultures, there have always been a minority of those who simply have no desire for creating a family and entering into the world of business, for example. In some cultures, these individuals are called shamans or mystics, monks, nuns, and to the Hindus, yogis, yoginis, swamis, swaminis. The Hindu perspective takes into consideration the wisdom of samsara. Consider if one lives a successful life, going through the 4 ashramas, which may take several lives to successfully complete, what would be the purpose in doing it all over again? Ideally, though not always the case, the sannyasin should be one who simply has no desire to once again go through the cycle of family and career. Now one capitalizes on the successful 4 ashramas ending in sannyas and begins a life of total immersion into a deep religious life of service and guidance of others. However, there is another way that sannyasins also go through the 4 ashramas. They are, of course, brahmacharis, dressed in white and spend at least 12 years in study. Of course, the true sannyasins always maintain their brahmacharya or celibacy throughout their life. Included in this period of study, the sannyasin often takes on the yellow robes of the yogi-yogini, denoting a serious period of self-denial. Living off the grid and often alone, these true yogis are going through a period of totally absorbing and, in a sense, becoming the teachings. With this understanding, hopefully many, and especially Hindus, will understand the great insult and disrespect it is for anyone, Hindu or not, to, after a simplistic time of study, declare oneself a yogi or yogini. After study and at least 1 year period of renunciation, the sannyasins, in a sense, adopt the world family. Many may travel extensively, learning, serving, and teaching the Dharma. It is in this stage that one becomes recognized as a Swami Swamini. This title, recognizing one's ability to teach from experience, is something given to one and never simply assumed. When it comes to teaching the Hindu Yoga Dharma, it is important to respect that teaching is not only for the sannyasins. In Hinduism, we have many family people who become pandits, panditas, and pujaris. They are teaching the basics and performing the rituals of the religion. The sannyasins are looked to more as the philosophers, though they may teach the basics, they may also do pujas. Excluding, however, marriage and death ceremonies, which are only for the married pandits. The Grihastha Pandits are, in a sense, in the profession of the religion. They often go from home to home, temple to temple. Unlike the sannyasins, as family people, they will charge for their services, often blessing homes and even cars, as well as performing marriage, birth, and death ceremonies. They are highly trained in the many mantras and rituals. Unlike some other religions, in Hinduism, we in a sense have the best of both worlds. The married, quote-unquote, clergy naturally understand family life, performing the appropriate ceremonies, while the celibate sannyasins present the philosophical and mystical teachings and practices leading to the ultimate goal of Atma Darshana. Now, number 9 is the Varna Ashrama Dharma, which are the 4 natural stages of life. Unfortunately, due to laziness and capitulation, the Portuguese word caste, meaning breed, was introduced and allowed to continue to this very day. However, the Sanskrit Hindu word varna, which means tone, refers to one's vibration or natural proclivities. Caste, on the other hand, was used to lock individuals into a rigid hierarchical system. In all cultures, however, one can find basically 4 areas of production, occupation, that allow any society to efficiently function. One of these are the Sudras, or the laborers, builders, those in response responsible for maintenance and craftsmanship. These are necessary occupations to literally build and maintain a society. Hindus refer to this varna as Sudra. Remembering that varna means tone, to be meaningful and most effective, each occupation should be something to which an individual is naturally drawn. Does it not make sense, for example, to have someone build one's home that really loves and has a creating feeling for construction? The next natural varna is the business varna, one of the most popular varnas. This involves business and a certain affection, if you will, for money. Commerce is what feeds individuals and societies. With the all-important Atma spiritual thread running through all the varnas, one becomes honest in their business dealings. Maintaining a proper perspective, remember Lakshmi holds the Amritam next to her chest and lets the money flow out. The next natural division in society are the warriors. We call them Kshatriyas in Hinduism. In all societies, there are those who feel the call, if you will, to help and protect others. Kshatriyas have a warrior spirit, which comes from a love of others and a strong sense of duty. Not coincidentally, the heart chakra, Anahata, is where Hindus place their youthful, loving warrior deities like Skanda Muruga, Hanuman, Krishna, and Durga Ma. True love is nonviolent. A true warrior carries out their duty without animosity. And the fourth natural division in society are the educators, or Brahmins. In all societies, there are those who have natural ability to teach others. Of course, all genuine teachers were dedicated students. Brahmins often become religious teachers or pundits. Note the sannyasins are actually outside the varna system. Seriously looking at the four varnas, one comes to the mature realization that one progresses into each varna having begun as a humble student willing to learn. When Hindus misuse the Portuguese term caste, they have fallen into the all too human tendency to form negative hierarchies, feeling either superior or inferior. However, a bit of reflection shows that all four varnas are necessary, and no one is better or less than. Many Hindus sadly forget the Atma thread, that like all the ashramas must flow through the varnas. Atma Darshana is a must in order to fully understand and appreciate the importance of all four ashramas and varnas. To completely understand varna, the Hindu Dharma also teaches the wisdom of Purusha Sukta, or the universal person. This important concept brings everything together in the realization that to one degree or another, we all do these varnas. For example, we all do some labor. We all do some business transactions. We all hopefully protect our loved ones, animals, and the earth. And we are in varying degrees educators. Of course, there are often the super wealthy and or the narcissists, those who feel certain types of work are totally beneath their position. The latter, of course, following adharma and not dharma. From the Tirukural, one who understands one's duty to society truly lives. All others shall be counted among the dead. Chapter 22, verse 214. The benevolent consider themselves poor only when one is unable to render one's accustomed service to humanity. Chapter 22, verse 219. The benevolent expect not return for their dutiful giving. How can one ever repay the rain cloud? Chapter 22, verse 211. Give to the poor, and life will be richly graced. There is no greater profit for one than this. Chapter 24, verse 231. Hinduism in 10 words. The Panch Bhutas and the Panch Indriyas, or the 5 elements and the 5 senses. Last but by no means least are the 5 Panch elements, Bhutas, and the 5 senses, Indriyas. In fact, if we did a countdown, it would make logical sense to start with the Bhutas and the Indriyas, as this is how we experience our world. Of course, we all have the five senses, but so too are the elements within all of us. The Panch Bhutas and Panch Indriyas also directly correspond to the chakras. Hindus also symbolically view various devatas connected to the chakras. There is a corresponding order to them. Bhumi, earth, and Granaja, smell. Udaka, water, and Rasa, taste. Agni, fire, and Chaksusa, sight. Vayu, air, and Sparana, touch. Akasha, ether, and Shrautra, hearing. It is certainly the Hindu mindset, and exemplified in the puja, that Hindus worship the elements and the senses, along with human and divine manifestations. The profound wisdom of the Hindu yoga religion clearly demonstrates that Hindus essentially worship everything. A simply profound answer to the question, what do Hindus worship? But this everything must be explained. Worship is defined as, quote, respect and reverence, unquote. Respect has a twofold meaning, knowing what to propitiate or reach out to, and also what to avoid. For example, one fully respects the sun, without which there would be no life. However, because of the power of the sun, one also respects this power and knows when to avoid direct prolonged exposure. In this way, one can rationally state they worship everything, knowing what to attract and pay respect to as what to perhaps avoid. To expand upon the 33 types or kotis mentioned in Hinduism in 5 words, the kotis actually describe the world, the universe, and our own part in it. In general, many could be made to see the wisdom of these specifically Sanskrit Hindu terms. We have 8 vasus, objects, considering or consisting of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, and the sun, the moon, and the stars. Then we have the recognition of the 12 months of the year, the 12 Adityas, with a connection to various sun devatas. Mitraya Namaha, Raviye Namaha, Surya Namaha, Bharave Namaha, Kakaya Namaha, Pushne Namaha, Hiranyagarbha Namaha, Marichaye Namaha, Savitre Namaha, Arkaya Namaha, Aditya Namaha, Bhaskaraya Namaha. It's important to point out that, true to all of real Hatha Yoga, the latter are devotional postures to Hindu deities in the asana Surya Namaskar. Then we have the Ashwin twins, the twin physicians from the Vedas, which is symbolically the in and out breath and the alternate nostril breathing. Finally, we have the 11 Rudras. These 5 faces of Shiva correspond to the first 5 chakras: Sadyojita, Vamadeva, Agora, Tatparusha, and Isana. Then we have the 5 pranas or vital breaths: Pranaya Svaha, Apanaya Svaha, Vyana Svaha, Udanaya Svaha, Samana Svaya, Brahmane Svaha, Om. 11 is the recognition of the inner essence, which Hindus call the Atmana. Note, we have come full circle, beginning with the definition of yoga, Yujatman Brahmacha, and we end with this realization. Indeed, life is circular, which is the Hindu, or spiraling actually, which is the Hindu mindset and the mystical mindset in general. Remember, linear thinking has its place, but extremely limited, hence monotheism, as opposed to the polymorphic, monistic polymorphism of the Hindu dharma, the spiraling nature of life itself, like walking up a lighthouse, ascending, spiraling. One then becomes a beacon to others, rather than doing the opposite and being a con to others. Humanity has generally come to a point of understanding the circular, spiraling nature of life, though many still hold to an exclusive monotheistic doctrine. No longer do rational individuals believe the earth is flat. No longer do rational people believe in one superior race. Yes, there is a necessary time for linear thought and action, for this is a way humans create material things. It is the binary system, 1 and 0, that makes life compute. However, remember, it was from the Hindu mind that came the zero sunyam, taking humanity out of the limitations of Roman numerals. In other words, there is a place for the 1, or linear thinking, and a time for the 0, sunyam. Profoundly, in the Hindu study of the chakras, the first chakra is a square, while the rest are circles, recognizing the importance of the human creation of buildings, etc., and even the various institutions, of which religion is one, demonstrating the establishment of foundations from which we find solace and meaning. It is in some religions that some humans seek to go beyond material things and exclusive religious claims, while the monotheistic religions see only one way, one deity, one book, whereas the Hindus see many ways, many deities, and many books. In fact, Hindus are also people of the look. Puram Bindu Vajre Purush Tutaha. Ancient Bindu, Hindu soulful warrior. Uncover your youthful, loving warrior spirit. Look into the eyes of your fellow human beings and other creatures. What do you see? The black hole. It's there that we unify and then come out into the manifold nature of creation. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuravarante. Look into the black hole in the center of the eye. It's there that we unify. 0 to many is closer to reality. Hence, the Sanskrit, Tamil, Hindu neutral term Brahman for the Big Bang, you see. In the Hindu yogic dharma, so rare, Sat Chit Ananda is E equals mc square. Ganapati Muruga Shiva Shakti Om is gravity, electricity, magnetism, nuclear home. And this applies to the other sampradayas. Tamas, Rajas, Sattva, Guna attributes. Later Newton's laws of motion, very astute. Parinamaha Yoga Sutras is evolution, you know. Darwin was not the first to know how we grow. Avatar is really evolution's spiraling star. Matsya Tabut, and round we go. Arabic numerals, you say? The Hindus invented them, and the 0, hooray. For if it were not for the binary system you see, computers, cell phones, tablets, there would not be. And look at the modern guru, mantra, and yoga pretensions. These are all actually Hindu inventions. Karma Bhakti Raja Gyani is all different ERG, and work, heat, light, thermodynamics, which was also Count Rumford's insight. Maslow's hierarchy of human needs was found in the Purusharthas of Hindu psychology. In Sociology 101, we find Graves' 7 levels of human aspiration, and in the 7 chakras is a much deeper explanation. And in a way, Hindus understood DNA with the symbolism of the intertwining snakes, Nagdevata. Idda, Pingala, Shushmana, a balanced life makes. The discovery of the atom, in a sense, wasn't new. It was found in Hindu philosophy, Vaisesika, Paramanu. And even Robert Oppenheimer, in Los Alamos, he was quoting the Gita as the bomb explodes. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst into the sky, it would perhaps be like the splendor of the Atmana. Divya Surya Sahasrasya Bhava Yugaparutita Yadi Bhava Sadrishi Sasyad Bhasyas Tasyama Atmana. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Subramaniam, he uncovered the star's death, you see. Enter the black hole, full, but seems empty. All of this outer show can be found within the lingam, you know, and Kalima. Dark energy and all the rest are very difficult to express, but 0 to many, Vitarka Mudra, is closer to reality. Hence, the Sanskrit, Tamil, Hindu neutral term Brahman for the Big Bang, you see. Monotheism, linear thinking, of course, once came to the conclusion that the earth was flat. But the Hindus knew it was round and moving. Jagat. What do you think about that? Ponder. The sun is round, the moon is round, the seasons go round, the days go round, our eyes are round. So too round is the Bindu. Wake up to your inner wisdom, Hindu. Monotheism is rather crude indeed, rather monistic polymorphism, dharmanupati dharmi. Father's only half the equation and completely denies those of the female persuasion. Jai Mataji. Christian yoga? That insults both Christian and Hindu. Better to be honest, this you must do. Karma Bhakti Rajayani, this is Hindu Dharma. Om Shanti. Hot yoga, power yoga, oh, what a mess. Why did we let all this manifest? Hatha Vidya Bhaviri Avate Guya Veda Tu Prakashanam. What have we done? So, dear Hindus, now that you know, will you continue to let the Dharma go? Don't be afraid, don't be shy, and please don't hide. Show some concern and backbone for Hindu pride. For if we continue to capitulate rather than educate, the Dharma will only continue to deteriorate. So, fellow Hindus, let's uncover our youthful, loving warrior spirit. Then the next time someone steps up to you and asks, what is Hinduism and what do Hindus believe? You will be well equipped and prepared to teach them the Hindu understanding of reality. Om Shanti. Be proud to be a Hindu. Say, I've got a dot on my head and it's really, really red. It's a Bindu because I'm a Hindu and I'm proud to be a Hindu. What about you? And I do yoga because it's Hindu. Karma Bhakti Hatha Istu. Raja Gyan, it's all yoga, it's all Hindu, it's not bogus. And remember several sets of three. India, a country. Therefore, India didn't give yoga to the world, but the Hindus did. Indian, an ethnicity and or nationality. Not all Indians come from India. Not all born in India are ethnic Indians. Hindu, the religion to which anyone can join through study and the Namakarana Samskara. Remember, we're Hindus. We do yoga, all of it, to reach Atmana. Remember, Sat Yoga is Hindu, taught by Hindus, not for a fee. Asat Yoga is not taught by Hindus, not in a Hindu context, and not for a fee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Stand up for the Hindu Yoga Dharma. Om Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha.